This is a video about how to use Twitter to take over the world. Okay, not really. But if you're an academic that wants to use Twitter, I'm your girl. Let me preface this by saying I definitely don't have like a huge Twitter following or anything like that, but I am plugged into some communities on Twitter, and I have been able to do a lot of networking and connecting with different people because of my Twitter use. So I'm excited to share with you all how I did that, what accounts to follow, how to brand yourself on Twitter so that you are able to be visible as a researcher, as an academic, as an advocate, whatever you want to be, kind of in that realm of science or humanities research, that sort of thing. So let's get into it. My Twitter story is that I had a Twitter in high school, and I think it just come out, I don't know, sometime in high school, maybe freshman year. So when I got one, and I was like, okay, maybe it didn't just come out. Either way, I remember having a Twitter in high school. I used it just kind of to be funny with my friends, but it always was a source of like punishment for me because I would say something. I have super strict parents, and I would say something like, I hate school, and it'd be like, oh, well, really? You want the world to know that you are hating school, that you don't like school and education? Grounded. I saw other people getting to express themselves on social media. My parents were not with that at all. And I eventually just stopped because I remember my parents, like, they put alerts on their phone for every time I would tweet, which I don't know how they figured that out, but they did. And it made me stop tweeting. In college, I sort of used the Twitter a little bit, but it was always to just promote sorority events. Like, I never tweeted ideas of my own or anything like that. It's a whole bunch of retweets. When the election year, like 2016, I was doing like some retweeting and stuff, and I think maybe my last genuine tweet on my personal Twitter was like, my president is black. No, seriously, like, I think that's what it is. And I'm not going to even show you what my old Twitter handle is. Don't look at that. But it's a bunch of retweets, mainly from like 2016, 2017. So yeah, I stopped using it. Then once I graduated college and I started working, my supervisor and some coworkers had followed, they followed my personal Twitter that I hadn't been using in the past like few years, and I was like, like, how'd they find me on Twitter? That's really weird. Like, I just didn't know that researchers had Twitter. My mind was blown. I looked at their pages and I was like, yo, this is a whole different world, because all I had known was like white sorority girl Twitter, and I had known black Twitter, like, because black Twitter is like all black people, so all of black Twitter. And that's all I knew about Twitter. And I occasionally would check on Twitter, like 90 Day Fiance. There would be a lot of live tweeting about the show, and that's like one of the few shows that I actually watch consistently. So I would go on there and look for updates, sometimes about The Bachelor too, but never knew this whole academic, sciencey Twitter that exists. So something in me was like, you should create another Twitter. One, because I don't want my supervisors to really see my old Twitter and things that I tweeted in high school, like I hate school. And also because I thought it was definitely time for a rebrand, and I wanted to follow different people. I didn't want certain people following me. So I was just like, let's go for this. Let's do this. Academic Twitter does exist, and it's more, I wish it was called something different. People will refer to it as academic Twitter, but truly it's all scholars. You don't have to be in academia necessarily, and you also don't have to be like a graduate student, because that was one of my things that I was nervous about. It was like, I would follow some people and they would be in school somewhere, and I was in that awkward phase of, well, I just graduated undergrad, but I'm not in a program. And I was also super sad because I hadn't gotten in the past year. So I was just like, I don't fit in here. But I did. And I'm going to show you how I really found my community on Twitter and how I was able to boost myself and make a name for myself, as well as meet a lot of people in the field and become really connected. The first thing I did on Twitter was create a bio, and have my picture up there, obviously. And the good thing about creating a Twitter once you just graduated college is you most likely have some senior pictures that were like professionally taken, and you have like a nice current photo to put on your Twitter bio as your profile picture. So the profile picture is big, and also your banner photo is pretty big as well. And that's just the photo that goes behind your profile. Mine is a Bible verse about oppression and justice, so it's very fitting. And I felt that, you know, that said a lot about who I am. And I think when I first started my Twitter, it was like a really basic, like, I heart public health or something in that realm. But it's, you know, the idea is it's another picture to express who you are and how you want to brand yourself on Twitter. So if you are trying to be a researcher, or, you know, you want people to view you as a researcher, you may have something related to your field on there. There's a lot of people who do super cool research with animals, and so they'll have, like, you know, I don't know, like dinosaurs. I don't know why dinosaurs are the first animal that I thought of, but they may have some kind of animals in the background, but something to, at a first glance, people can see like, oh, this is what Bree is all about. I want to follow her, or I don't want to follow her. The next thing you want to do is create your bio. And your bio is really so people know who you are, and you only have like, it's really, really limited. I think it's like 160 characters to explain who you are, what you're about, what you stand for in that bio. And of course, we're human, we're complex, we can't fit everything that we want to in our bios, but we should be good at, you know, concisely and succinctly putting those words that we feel speak to who we are. So mine says, where I work, public health. I have UNC alumna, because that's very important to me, that I'm from North Carolina and that's where I went. And then Columbia Psych PhD student, collective action times socio-political determinants of mental health times Black liberation. And those are like my research interests and areas. And then I have Black and mental health because I'm a co-founder of that initiative, which also means a lot to me. And from that, you can see like, wow, this girl is like for the people. At least I hope that's what you see. But in all seriousness, yes. I mean, people look at my profile, they immediately know like that I am a Black community health researcher, that I'm into mental health and psychology. They know that I am a PhD student. And at the time when I was enrolled in school, I kind of just had, you know, like where I worked, what I was interested in. And I think I might have had like aspiring clinical psychologist or something in that realm. I also, if I had more room, and I might change this later, but put something like more fun about myself, because I'm definitely not your typical researcher. So I might have something like enjoys fitness, or, you know, solving crimes on Reddit, or something kind of fun and spunky like that, just so people know that I'm human. I personally really like it when people put things like that in their bio. And I think when you're at, you know, my stage where I am like a really green and like young researcher who hasn't fully fleshed out their ideas or what they want to do or made a name for themselves, it's really hard because you want to put the fun stuff in there, but you also want to be like, hey, like I'm here, these are my interests. So you kind of have to find the balance and whatever works for you and how you want to communicate what you do and who you are and what you're interested in on Twitter. Which brings me to the next thing. What do you tweet about? When I first started, I had no idea what to tweet about. And I'm also like super hurt when my tweets don't get any likes. Like I would delete tweets if they didn't get any likes, because I felt, you know, me and all my 10 followers, like if one of them didn't like it, it obviously must not be good. So I would just delete it. And I'm not like naturally a funny person, so I felt weird typing out more like comedic tweets that a lot of people like. I know I like comedy, but I know that I'm not funny, so I couldn't do that at all. And I just kind of stuck to strictly tweeting about academia or like, I don't know, things about public health, usually the news, like finding an article that I thought was interesting and sharing that. And then as I got a little more comfortable with Twitter, I would share an article and put a couple of my thoughts in the tweet as well, and hope that they were well taken. What you tweet about is really up to you, though. I know when I first started, I thought that I had to tweet about only academic things or papers, journals, scholarly work, and have like a big vocabulary and be super impressive or whatever. But if you want to present yourself as a researcher on Twitter or an academic, I think it is really important to show that more human side of you that isn't 100% focused on work all the time. that's what Twitter is for. It's supposed to be a very informal, thousands, or not even thousands, millions and millions of dialogues going on all at once from different people. It's fun. Twitter is meant to be fun, and I don't think a lot of people experience necessarily that like fun, informal side of academia, and that's what Twitter brought to my attention. So it's totally okay to share something like, oh my god, this Zoom meeting, I spilled coffee on myself. Who can relate? Or you don't even have to say who can relate. You just like tweet it out, and it's about your experience. It's like sort of work related. It's clean, you know, and people will like it because people can identify with that. It doesn't have to be, you know, only tweeting about like a paper that you published or something you found interesting. Granted, my Twitter is full of those things, but it's also full of just random statements about my life and about academia that I want to share with others. I've also branded myself as someone who is not your typical researcher. I wanted to break the mold. I didn't want my Twitter to mimic some of the other people that I had followed, and I was like, I really like their stuff, but that's not me. And so I think that the most important thing about branding yourself on Twitter and creating your empire or getting your following or whatever is to be authentic and be unapologetically authentic, because that's what's going to get people to follow you. And you don't want to have to keep up some kind of veneer or facade on Twitter, of all places. Like, that should be a place where you can be authentically yourself. And I say that with caveats. Like, of course, I don't tweet everything that comes to my mind. I'm still self-preserving, and I want to have, you know, people view me in a certain way, but that way I feel like is true to who I am. If you know me, you know that I am not like the biggest Instagram person. I used to be. I used to want to be like an influencer. That lasted like a day. But Instagram is actually really toxic for me. I don't tend to go on it too much. I rarely watch other people's stories. Sometimes I post my own, but I tend to shy away from Instagram. There was one point where I couldn't even go on the app without feeling like physically nervous. And I realized because I was comparing myself, or because you just see images, and people talk about that kind of highlight reel phenomenon, but it's very true. You just see the parts of people's lives that they want you to see, and there's no dialogue unless you want to read the caption. There's no dialogue other than your own thoughts that kind of influence how you view those images. And for me, that was really hard, because my dialogue was immediately like self-loathing when I saw things that I wanted for myself or that other people were doing. It was like, oh my god, you're not doing that. Oh wow, they're living their best life and you're not. It was not good for me. The thing that I liked the most about Twitter was that it was other people's dialogues. It's other people's thoughts. It's community-based. I love that about Twitter so much. As a new researcher, as a, you know, budding therapist or a therapist in training, I loved and really valued seeing other people's thoughts on different things in the field related to research, related to best practices, related to just emotions that we feel as researchers, of being burnt out or exhausted or overjoyed and excited, all of those different things. And also getting to connect with people about the application process. And people are really friendly on Twitter, mostly. I'll get into that. But when you find, you know, your circle of academics or of people who share the same views as you, it becomes a place of support. And like any social media app, you have to have your boundaries. So I keep saying community, whatever. What does that really mean? For me, that meant following a couple of key accounts, one of which was Open Academics. And I think once I followed Open Academics, that's at Open Academics, it really broadened my horizons. I was like, whoa, this is academic Twitter. If you're a scholar who's not following Open Academics already, go and follow them right now. It is a phenomenal community that embraced me as a new researcher. It embraced me as somebody who was going through the application process, who had failed at it once. It was a place where I was like, wow, there are other people who think like me. Like, not everyone wants to sit at a desk 9 to 5 and produce papers that go into journals. Like, no, this is breaking the mold. These are people who are oriented towards open science and fostering relationships in academia. It was just such a game changer for me. Open Academics I feel like just exposed me to a lot of different people that I normally wouldn't have exposed myself to. So as a researcher and academic, of course, I wanted to follow everyone in clinical psychology, everyone in counseling psychology, social psychology, developmental, all in that psych realm. I also followed some public health people, but I stayed within those kind of limitations and boundaries that I'd set for myself. With open academics, I was exposed to people who are doing research of all kinds, and you'll be amazed at how you can find the intersections between your own research and others. The account does follow Fridays and mingle Mondays. They were these events where, on Twitter, of course, not like real events, but they would post and they'd have hundreds and hundreds of comments of people introducing themselves, making connections. It felt like I was at a mixer, but like on Twitter. And that's where the majority of my following came from. I feel like when I finally found that account and decided that it was something I wanted to keep pursuing and keep tweeting and meeting others. So what's key is finding your tribe and finding those who are gonna support you and who think like you. And that can be someone in your field, or it can be someone completely not in your field. I know I follow people who are doing work in physics and astronomy who I don't know what they're talking about half the time, but we bond over, just wanting to do something big with our degrees and wanting to influence our communities and each other. And I've found that to be a really great place for support. You're going to want to follow things related to your field though, because that is going to, for me at least, following different conferences, different researchers, different institutions and labs that were all in my realm of research, that's what led to more, I don't want to say profitable, I would say that's what led to more immediately beneficial networks. Because Twitter is such an informal space, it allows you to connect with researchers that you may have had like a research crush on, in an informal and easy way. So I know, I remember stalking potential PIs on their Twitters and just, casually liking things here and there. And then I would gain enough courage to actually interact with their tweets. And that proved to be some of the best decisions I made because, I would follow them. Sometimes they followed me back and they got to see what I was all about. And it paid off. I obviously didn't go to every single school where I followed like a PI that I wanted to work with, but it did allow me to just see a different side of them and for them to see a different side of me. And if you're playing your cards right and you're actually, posting things that are insightful and related to your field and, exciting, people are going to want to follow you. If there was someone who I felt their work was really interesting, I would comment on their Twitter, on their tweets and just say, wow, this is really cool, or I'd love to learn more. Would you want to chat about this kind of thing? And for the most part, they're open because like I said, it's so informal and you don't want to abuse it. You don't want to instead of emailing potential PIs or people, just look them up on Twitter and tweet them or something like that. But I think it is a really good place for making those casual conversations that can turn into something larger. If you want to build an empire on Twitter, if you want to get started as an academic researcher, know how to brand yourself, know what parts of yourself you want to convey. I think that was something that was hard for me initially because, I am human. We all are. We're multifaceted, we're dynamic, and there are things that I think in my head that I'm not going to put on my Twitter because that would not contribute well to the brand that I'm building. So you really have to be conscious about that and think, do I want potential researchers to see this? Or in 10 years, when I look back at this, will I be proud of it? Or will I be like, oh, yikes? Because I know we've all seen our Facebook post from 2010 and want to scream. You're also going to want to create a community. And that means I would start with just following researchers that you know or are interested in. Follow your friends. Follow different conferences that happen in your field of study or that you're interested in. Follow different organizations, nonprofits and such. I had it pretty easy because I feel like I'm interested in everything related to the Black community and health. So following those types of organizations and nonprofits was really easy for me to find. And then looking through their followers or looking to see who they retweet. There are people to follow, and it's really easy to find people to follow on Twitter. And you might follow someone for a little while and decide, you know, I don't really want to follow them anymore, and that's completely okay. I think the one thing about Twitter that I also like is that your followings don't seem to matter as much as it does on Instagram. And what I mean by that is, you know, it feels good when someone likes your when someone likes your posts on Instagram or on Twitter. It feels good, and you want that to happen. And it's always nerve-wracking starting your Twitter with 10 followers and you're like, wow, like no one's gonna engage with me. But the great thing about Twitter is that it's very community-based. It's a community platform where I know at one point, I think I had like 150 followers at that point, and I had a tweet that was able to go viral just because of people retweeting it or sharing it or, you know, favoriting it and it appearing on other profiles. And when they saw it, like, it's easy for your tweets and your ideas to get exposure on Twitter. I really like that because on Instagram, your likes are determined purely by how many followers you have. Just some few things to remember. Always mind what time you're posting. I know that my followers, and I've learned this over time, but my followers are primarily concentrated on the East Coast of the United States. They're also in Central Time as well. So I know that if I'm posting at like 3 in the morning, I'm not going to get that much engagement. And if I have a bright idea at 3 in the morning, I might want to wait until like 10 a.m. or something like that. You may also be like, how often do I tweet? And that's really up to you. I think that if your goal is to build a following, you're going to want to tweet pretty often, but not too often. You want to tweet, I mean, I try to make it a goal to tweet something like daily. And I know it sounds overwhelming because at first I was like, what am I going to talk about? But, you know, now I think my last tweet at the moment is like, I love Black people. It was like a very simple statement, but, you know, it was powerful and it's what I was feeling in the moment, and I tweeted it. I try and make it something that I do daily. It is an app that I check daily. I don't check Instagram daily. I don't check Facebook daily. So it is my social media of choice. And I think that it's a great social media tool for researchers and academics and people who want their voices to be heard, because that's what it's all about. That exposure piece is a big deal on Twitter. If you want to get exposure as a person and a researcher and really make a name for yourself and build your brand, I do feel like Twitter is the place to do that, especially in the research community. It is a place where people convene and have conversations about papers or about the news. Another quick tip is to use the list feature on Twitter. So whether you want to create your own list or if you want to follow someone else's list, you can look for a list about whatever you want. And these are basically long just lists of researchers or different accounts that you want to follow or that you can follow related to a certain topic. So for Black and Mental Health, we have a Black and Mental Health Twitter list, and it's a bunch of, you guessed it, Black and mental health researchers and advocates and therapists and whoever on that list that have interesting work and interesting accounts that someone who is in the same area of study or who just wants more exposure to Black people in the field can go and look at that list and find immediately people to follow. There are also trending hashtags. Like when I wake up in the morning, I usually look and see what's trending because Twitter has become my news source as well. I like to see what's trending and see if I can maybe tweet about, you know, whatever it is that day that's trending. And usually if I do that and I time it well, then my tweets are going to get a lot of engagement because it's something that the whole world is talking about. And you may find that, you know, as you start with academic Twitter or Black Twitter or whatever, you're going to branch out into different Twitter communities because that's what it's all about. It's one community, but it's a lot of sub-communities at the same time. And there's often a lot of interplay between different worlds. The last thing I want to say is take care of yourself. On Twitter, as supportive of an environment as it can be, there are a lot of trolls. Trolls are people and accounts who will say really derogatory and honestly just hurtful things about you. I've been trolled pretty often just because my tweets are, I feel like I'm in a very liberal circle on Twitter, and I'm definitely very progressive. Some would call me radical. I am someone who believes in complete liberation and revolution and decolonization, and I think because of that, I am targeted by those with opposing views. How they find me, I don't know. I am someone who, if I don't like what I see, I just don't interact with it. But for some people, they gain from putting others down who they perceive to be less than or wrong. I wish I could say that it didn't hurt, but it does. I mean, I've gotten, I don't know what the worst comment I've gotten is, but what hurt me the most was when I tweeted about feeling like so hurt about the Breonna Taylor verdict that had come out that day. I tweeted something about, you know, how Black women had raised me and how I hate to see how this country treats us like garbage. And I got a lot of trolls on that tweet saying, you know, you're wrong, we don't treat you like garbage, what are you talking about, you're delusional, you're some other choice words. And it hurt so bad in the moment because I just really didn't want to deal with it. This was the day of the verdict of her murder, and I deleted the tweet after that because I didn't want that energy. And I do like that Twitter will hide those tweets from you. Like if they perceive something to be off or, you know, potentially hurtful to you, they're actually going to hide the tweet, and you have to click on like, show me these tweets that are potentially offensive, and most of the time they are. So yeah, I would just say guard yourself and know that there's always people out there who may disagree with you. There are people out there who are going to have views that are very different from yours. Because it is a community and there's a lot of exposure, you may see things on your feed that you're like, why the heck am I seeing this? You know, and it may trigger you. And I think that you have to be really mindful of that, and you have to set boundaries, because Twitter is a lot of information coming at you at once. And while that can be super exciting, it can also be really detrimental to your mental health. So those are the basics on how I created my Twitter empire. It's still growing for sure. I'm by no means done growing, you know, my following and tweeting out different ideas, but I have met a lot of really cool people, and I think that a lot of good opportunities have come from it. I've gotten an internship from it. I have met 2 professors that I really wanted to interact with and meet in like email in some kind of way, but was too nervous to, and they actually ended up reaching out to me on Twitter. And I've been exposed to a lot of different research ideas and people and networks as well that have actually shaped where I want to take my work. So it's a tool for exposure and for opening your mind and your eyes to different things that are out there. I highly recommend it. Those are my few pointers for wanting to start. You can also start by following me. Duh. But no, seriously, you can definitely give me a shout on Twitter, and I will engage with you, of course. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I will see you next week. If you enjoyed this video, definitely be sure to subscribe. Thanks.